We promised ourselves never to make another video about 15-minute cities. The conspiracy theories about people being locked inside their homes and unable to travel are just so far out of left field that it's hard to engage with them like any normal disagreement. But this video is going to be different. Rather than tackling the conspiracy theories, we actually want to talk about the problems or at least the limitations of the 15-minute city concept itself.
Cities should be designed or redesigned so that within the distance of a 15-minute walk or bike ride, people should be able to live the essence of what constitutes the urban experience. To access work, housing, food, health, education, culture, and leisure.
Carlos Moreno, the creator of the concept, has a lower benchmark, the 30-minute territory for lower density areas, but mostly he talks about 15 minutes. He presents the concept as a reaction against post-war land use planning that separates the functions of life into different sectors or zones of the city. You live here, shop there, work over there, have fun somewhere else, and assumes you will drive from one to the other. Moreno flips this on its head and says that the 6 main functions of a city should be close together and accessible by walking or cycling. By embracing proximity and non-car modes, we can have more time to enjoy our lives in safer, more pleasant cities.
There's a lot to like in this embrace of proximity. We've been lucky enough to live in many older neighborhoods built before modern zoning, and it's pretty awesome. Urban planning that intentionally separates people from destinations has been a disaster. At the same time, the 15-minute city has limitations. The first is that it doesn't recognize the distinction between generic and specialized amenities, and why specialized destinations are so important. Consider schools. The Toronto District School Board has 500 elementary schools, which is enough to reach most students in the city within a 15-minute walk or bike ride. But colleges and universities tend to be much larger and more specialized, and Toronto only has about a dozen of them. It's just not possible to place a college or university in every single neighborhood, and even if it was, you don't necessarily pick the college or university closest to you. You have a really strong incentive to pick the one that offers the program you want, even if it means a commute.
Jobs can also be very specialized. If you want to work at a cafe, then you have options all over, and you can maybe even work within your neighborhood. But if you're trained in biomedical research, there might only be a handful of employers in your city, and maybe only one is hiring now. Grocery stores can and should exist in every single neighborhood. But if you want Greek food, you might want to go all the way to a restaurant in your city's Greek town. For healthcare, pharmacies and dentists can be sprinkled around, but hospitals tend to be larger, centralized, and specialized, just like universities. Every neighborhood can have some parks, but most cities can only sustain one Six Flags-style amusement park or racetrack open to cyclists.
Taken literally, the 15-minute city misses the point of cities. A city is not just a collection of neighborhoods with neighborhood amenities. It's much bigger than that. A city is a place where you can work in tech, your partner can do a degree in urban planning, maybe your kid can go to a French immersion school, you can frequent a powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting gym, and your partner can go to board game meetups. You can live close to some of these, but probably not all of them. And if you limit yourself to 15 minutes of travel, you really do miss out on a lot of what makes cities great.
It's actually hard to tell how literally Moreno means the concept. We read the book and he didn't say, nobody should ever travel more than 15 minutes. He definitely didn't advocate for restrictions on movement like the conspiracy theorist critics worry about. But he did consistently come back to 15 minutes as the goal, without really covering exceptions or grappling with the value of specialized amenities and destinations. And some of his examples were odd. The 15-minute city makes a lot of sense to guarantee that everyone in suburban Edmonton has access to groceries and schools. But he talks about turning Paris into a 15-minute city. Paris? That would have been one of our go-to examples of a city that's already 15 minutes for most routine destinations. It's definitely not a post-war Anglosphere city with suburban-style zoning.
The second problem with the concept of 15-minute cities is that public transit doesn't usually work on that time frame. It usually takes at least a few minutes to get to the station or stop, at least a few minutes to wait for your train or bus, and at least a few more minutes to walk to your destination at the end. Even in a city with pretty good transit, 15 minutes is typically the start of what's possible for the total travel time from A to B. Moreno's book is actually a little unclear on how transit fits into the 15-minute city. Sometimes he leaves it out altogether.
Of a 15-minute walk or bike ride.
Sometimes he includes it and allows for a 15-minute transit trip too, which again is on the low end of what's useful. Sometimes he talks about having 15 minutes to get to a transit station, which is more reasonable, but doesn't really fit the theme of the book, or his other statements about avoiding long journeys on overcrowded public transportation.
He praises the bike infrastructure of the Netherlands, but another success of Dutch urbanism is the intercity train system. It brings the country together and makes nearby cities function like one big city, sharing their amenities like jobs, sports, and museums with each other. It's a success of proximity, but in the form of a 30 or 45-minute train ride instead of a 15-minute walk. Or consider Wrigley Field in Chicago, which is exceptionally well integrated into the surrounding neighborhood. Lots of people can just walk to a game, and that's awesome. But the stadium would not be successful here without many more people coming from further away on transit.
The third limitation of 15-minute cities is that governments don't actually have the power to place amenities wherever they want. They can guarantee coverage for basic needs owned by the government, from libraries to elementary schools, with the caveat that some things owned by the government, like universities and hospitals, still benefit from centralization and specialization. But when it comes to private amenities like stores, the most we can do is change zoning to allow them in more places, and maybe provide incentives. It's still a very worthy goal to have a grocery store in every neighborhood, for example, but we should be careful to avoid the mindset of seeing urban planners as painters, drawing the city as they want in order to create a masterpiece. They're more like gardeners nurturing a plot of land with seeds, water, and fertilizer and hoping for growth.
In the end, the idea of 15-minute cities is directionally correct but shouldn't be taken too literally. Last century's urban planning separated people from destinations and enforced car use, and we need to push back. Proximity has a lot of benefits. A 15-minute walk or bike ride is a pretty good goal for lots of destinations, like grocery stores and elementary schools. However, it doesn't necessarily work for the more specialized destinations that make cities so powerful. You don't move to a city for a job. You move ideally for a well-paying job that fits your skills and interests. It's great to have a bookstore or grocery store nearby, but a big part of city life is traveling further for that one unique bookstore or that particular restaurant your friend wanted to try.
If there's a consequence of overlooking specialized amenities in cross-city travel, it's not people being locked in their homes or the other worries from conspiracy theorists. But this type of thinking might, for example, lead to downplaying the importance of speed when designing transit. Toronto is building a lot of new light rail lines, like the Finch LRT, that won't necessarily be much faster than existing bus routes. Edmonton's new Valley Line LRT, as nice as it is, was designed to be slower than the city's older but very successful light rail lines. In Montreal, a fast elevated metro planned for the east end of the city was cancelled, in hopes of a slower but more aesthetically appealing tram that would require an additional transfer to get downtown. Some planners in Vancouver paradoxically look to Portland's light rail as a model, even though it's significantly slower and gets much less ridership than Vancouver's own SkyTrain.
Likely none of this comes directly from the idea of 15-minute cities. But there's definitely a broader reaction against car culture's prioritization of speed and distance underlying a lot of this. In lots of cases, we're on board. Some of the ways we've designed our streets to prioritize speed over safety have been grotesque. But there will always be good reasons for people to travel longer distances across their city. Rather than focusing entirely on an unrealistic standard of 15 minutes, we should also think how we can trim people's hour-long transit commutes down to 45 minutes, for example. That's an important win, just like legalizing more grocery stores close to people.
This video was inspired in part by commentary from French economist Alain Berthaud, criticizing 15-minute cities in the context of Paris. But what more directly spurred us to make the video was encountering people who took the concept more literally than we would expect, including actually thinking that 15 minutes was a reasonable standard even for things like work. Don't get us wrong, a 15-minute commute is really nice, but life is about trade-offs and most people will consider a longer commute for a job that really fits their skills and interests or that pays much more. Thanks for watching through to the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and a special thanks to our supporters on Patreon.